This in itself suggests a certain type of personality that perhaps is inward, can do without people, can be perhaps dedicated?
Not mixing with other people very much.
It's rumored that perhaps this case would be tried by a military court because, of course, President Kennedy is our commander-in-chief.
I don't know anything about that. We have him charged in the state court, and he's a state prisoner at present.
And you will conduct the trial?
Yes, sir, I plan to.
Full verdict?
We'll ask the death penalty.
How many cases of this type have you been involved in? That is, when the death penalty is involved.
Since I've been district attorney, I've asked the death penalty in 24 cases.
And how many times have you attained it?
23.
Thank you, Mr. District.
Later in the evening, Homicide Captain Will Fritz, the man who has been interrogating Oswald, tells reporters some news that would please the district attorney.
This is Captain Fritz, head of the homicide squad, who's been conducting the investigation and interrogation. Captain, can you give us a resume of what you now know concerning the assassination of the president and Mr. Oswald's role in it?
There's only one thing that I can tell you without going into the evidence. Before first talking to the district attorney, I can tell you that this case is cinched, that this man killed the president. There's nothing in my mind about it.
What is the basis for that
No,
statement?
sir, I don't want to go into the basis. I don't want to get into the evidence. I just want to tell you that we are convinced, beyond any doubt, that he did the killing.
And was it spur of the moment or a well-planned, long-thought-out plot?
That I'd rather not discuss that, if you don't mind, please. Thank you.
Is he going to remain here?
He'll be here today, yes, sir. Probably not. Thank you.
Any accomplices, Captain?
This is Chief Fritz of the Homicide Squad, who has just told reporters in no uncertain terms that he and the rest of officials here in Dallas are thoroughly convinced that they have their man, no doubt about it, 100% airtight case. The case, as he said, is cinched.
Captain, homicide and robbery.
And Captain Fritz now goes to, we thought he was going to the elevator. He goes out a side door. Chief Fritz of the Homicide Squad is one of the crack interrogators not only in Dallas, Texas, but throughout the Southwest. He's been working intermittently on Oswald. Now he tells reporters there is no doubt this case against Oswald is cinched. He is the man who assassinated President Kennedy. This is Paul Good.
Fritz returns to question Oswald further, and afterwards he once again is besieged by reporters.
Yes, ma'am.
Still think it's a cinch?
Yes, sir.
You say he did buy the gun in Chicago?
it's more of a cinch than it was earlier today?
I sure do. I think it's getting a little better as we go along.
It's getting a little better to go along.
Will he break? Will we have a confession tonight?
Well, I think he bought that rifle in Chicago.
Chicago?
You think you've gotten to the point of
You think he bought the rifle in Chicago?
Yes, sir.
Tell me
Chicago?
this. What's the address out of? What's the address out of?
It is evening, November 24th, 1963. At Dallas Police Headquarters, investigators have questioned Lee Harvey Oswald all day about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade has been working close with investigators, but Oswald does not have an attorney yet. This prompts a visit to police headquarters by the president of the Dallas Bar Association.
President of the Dallas Bar Association. He has been talking to Mr. Oswald, and he will make a statement for you if he desires.
Can we get your initials first, Mr. Nichols?
My name is H. Lewis Nichols. Louis-Nichols. I'm Nichols. I am the president of the Dallas Bar Association, the organized bar here in Dallas. We had been advised that statements had been made that Mr. Oswald was unable to get any Dallas lawyer who would make any inquiry about representation, or that he was unable to get any representation here in Dallas. When I heard about that this afternoon, I decided I should come down and make inquiry as to whether or not he was represented by counsel, whether or not he desired to be represented by counsel, and whether or not he would ask the Dallas Bar Association to furnish representation to him. I have just visited with him in his cell, and he advises that his first preference is that he be represented by a lawyer in New York, whose name I believe is John Abt, A-B-T. He then stated that if he could not be represented by that individual, he would like to have a lawyer who was a member of the American Civil Liberties Union represent him. He said that if he was unable to get anyone from that organization, why then he might call upon the local bar association to represent him. I asked him whether or not at this time he was asking the Dallas Bar Association to do anything toward representing him, and he advised that he was not, that he did not desire that we take any steps toward obtaining representation for him, and that if he was unable to obtain the other representation, he might at a later time ask us to do so, and did ask that I would check back with him at a later time to see whether or not there would be any necessity or desirability that we attempt to furnish representation for him. Having contacted him and satisfied myself that he was not being deprived of representation by an attorney, and having satisfied myself that he did not desire to be represented by a Dallas attorney, I then left, and that's the situation as it exists right now. My name is H. Louis Nichols, L-O-U-I-S-N-I-C-H-O-L-S.
Did you talk about anything else other than the...
He didn't discuss the details of it. I did not ask him anything. He appeared to me to be perfectly rational, and I could observe no abnormalities about him at all in the short time that I visited with him.
What do you know about John Abt?
I don't know anything about him.
Are you going to try to contact Abt?
No, I'm not.
What did he say? What is that lawyer?
He didn't say.
He didn't say, he didn't give any reason.
He didn't give any reason. I didn't ask him.
Well, who's going to try and get Abt?
I don't know.
How long were you waiting?
About 3 minutes.
Did he say how he was trying to contact Mr. Abt?
He said he had talked to members of his family this afternoon, and they would endeavor to get in touch with Mr. Abt.
What was his mood when he talked to Mr. Nichols? Did he seem...
Union was the second choice?
He said he was a member of that organization and would like to have a lawyer who was a member of that organization represent him.
Does he personally know Abt?
I don't know.
How would you describe his mood?
Is he calm?
Well, he appeared to be calm, and
Is he defiant?
I didn't understand you.
Is he defiant?
Defiant? He did not appear to be defiant. He discussed the matter with me in a very rational way and very calm way, and we discussed the matter, and I satisfied myself that he knew what he was talking about and didn't desire my services or the services of any member of the Dallas Bar Association.
Does he fully understand the charges against him?
I don't know.
You didn't discuss it?
I did not discuss the charge with him.
As a lawyer, do you feel the fact that he does not have one here would hurt the prosecution's case?
I do not believe so, since he is not asking for a lawyer to represent him at this time.
Do you think it's possible to get an impartial jury?
Probably. In Dallas it is.
The question was asked, may I ask it again, is it possible for this man to get an impartial jury? Would you answer that again, please?
Well, in my opinion, it is.
You think he can get a fair trial in Dallas?
I think he can get a fair trial in Dallas.
Do we understand, sir, that you and the Bar Association will help him get an attorney only if it is not Mr. Abt or the ACLU? In other words, if it is a Dallas attorney. Is that correct, sir?
Well, I have no control over any other attorney. I have no control over any attorney except myself. It is the feeling of the Dallas Bar Association that an indigent defendant should be represented. And one of the programs of the association is to furnish lawyers to represent defendants in criminal cases who are unable to provide their own attorneys.
Have you had any calls from anyone in your organization about handling this case?
I have had some inquiry about whether or not there were any Dallas lawyers representing this man, and I made inquiry and determined that apparently there are none at this time. He hasn't requested any representative.
Is the Dallas Bar Association the integrated bar that is part of the Supreme Court?
It's a voluntary bar association. The State Bar of Texas is the integrated bar. The Dallas Bar Association is a voluntary association.
Does the representation of indigent people include communists? Has a communist ever been so represented in Dallas?
I don't know.
Did you mention anything about his financial means?
I did not. I merely asked him whether or not he desired to have an attorney appointed by the association to assist him, and he said no.
Were these calls from people in the attorney profession, or were they from citizens? Rather?
They were other lawyers that I'm acquainted with.
They were anxious to...
No, so they made inquiry as to whether or not the Dallas Bar Association was doing anything to see whether or not this man could obtain local representation, and I decided I'd find out.
Were these local members who called?
Would be willing to represent him?
I have not talked to any attorneys at all about it.
Would you be willing to represent him?
I do not practice criminal law and have never tried a criminal case, so I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
It has been many hours now since newsmen gathered in the corridor have seen Oswald. But the long vigil now pays off, and this time Oswald has something to say to them.
And here comes Lee Harvey Oswald. His back is to you. You can't quite see him. His face is still...
The basic fundamental hygienic rights, I mean, like a shower and clothes.
Before he's pushed into a door for questioning, he said he would like certain basic fundamental rights, including the right to take a shower. Now, of course, we don't know if he's deprived of this privilege that he calls a right. A group of tall and husky Dallas deputies herded him into room 317. That's the room that's marked homicide and robbery. The title doesn't quite seem up to the gravity of this crime. He's pale-faced. He had a rather sickly smile on his face. You perhaps will see him a little bit better when he leaves the interrogation room to return to his cell later in the evening. Of course, each time that he does come into that interrogation room, expectations go up. Perhaps this will be the time when the big awaited break in this case will come, when he'll confess, when they will be able to write finis to this tragic episode. This is Paul Good.
Later, Oswald comes back down the hallway, and this time he has something to say about the crime he is accused of.
Here comes Oswald down the hall again.
Did you find that rifle? That's dispatches you people have been given, but I emphatically deny these charges.
Oswald is hustled through a doorway.
I have not committed any acts of violence.
He says he has nothing against anybody. He has not committed any act of violence. Oswald makes this claim as he's hustled from the interrogation room through a doorway, down an elevator, up an elevator into his jail cell. His face is very badly discolored, the results of a scuffle with police when he was apprehended the other day. Now, Oswald has made his latest flat denials in the face of a mounting pile of evidence against him. The last links in this case seem to be hammered into place tonight. Police have traced a rifle purchased in Chicago by mail order for $12.78. They've traced it to Oswald. He bought it under the alias of A. Heidel. Handwriting experts have established that the handwriting on the purchase order was, in fact, made by Oswald. At the price of $12.78, the life of the President of the United States apparently was bought.
It has been a long day. But before calling it a night, Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry brings reporters up to date on the status of his case.
Assault what? Assault to murder against Governor John B. Connally. That charge has been filed also.
Can you read that, sir? Admit owning the rifle?
Sir?
Does he admit owning the rifle?
He will not admit ever owning a rifle, no.
Well,
What did you say when you showed him the pictures?
I wasn't there.
What did Fritz say?
Captain Fritz said he didn't get much out of it. No.
Since this is apparently the termination of your day with Oswald, could you sum up what progress was made today toward a confession, if any?
I don't think we've made any progress toward a confession.
You don't think so?
What about building the case? Building your case?
I think her case was in good shape this morning and is much stronger tonight. We will continue to work on every possible shred of evidence that comes to our attention.
Why are you so pessimistic about a confession?
Well, you know, we've been in the business a good while, and sometime you can sort of draw your own conclusions after talking to a man over a period of time. Of course, he might have a change of heart, but I'd be rather surprised if he did.
Chief, do you consider the FBI letter and the photograph a real blockbuster in the investigation?
I would say that that was a very helpful link there. A link in our chain of evidence, yes.
Chief, is that the warrant you have?
This is the warrant of arrest,
Can we see
yes.
it, sir? Just hold it up. Good, thank you, sir.
What court?
Was he confronted?
That was filed in the same court, Justice Court Precinct Number 2. Same as the other cases.
When will he be arraigned on that?
On the powder burn, is there anything from the FBI on that?
No, I haven't had that report yet.
Chief, you saying basic things are closed down now?
Basically, yes.
When will the arraignment be on this?
I don't know.
Tonight?
No, I don't think so.
Could you give us a typical reaction of Oswald when you show him, for instance, the picture?
I was not present, so I couldn't give you that.
Can you tell us why his mother and his wife were here today and what they did?
They visited with him. I understand that he asked them to attempt to get his attorney, John Apt, out of New York. And I think that's what they were doing.
Has anyone heard anything from Apt? Did you know?
Well, it's hearsay with me, and I don't know who said this, but somewhere back in the office, someone said that they understood John Apt did not want to handle the case. Now, that's hearsay as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think we'll have the final ballistics tomorrow?
I think so.
What do you think the results will be?
I think they'll be good.
Did you get a report through telephone today?
I've had some information, but not a formal report.
And the information is positive?
The information is very pleasing to us.
Chief, can I see the warrant again, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
Was he confronted today with all the facts that you told us? And,
Yes.
and even the one you didn't tell us about?
Yes.
Could we have an opportunity to see the transparencies that show him with the guns?
I don't think so. These might be, we might attempt to use this as evidence, and it might cause us not to be able to introduce them if it had been published in a paper.
But he's clearly identifiable in the photo.
They are clearly identified.
So is he.
Yes. Sir?
Can you say where they came from?
They came from where his wife stays, I believe, out in Irving.
Chief, will you transfer him under heavy guard?
I'll leave that up to Sheriff Decker. That's his responsibility.
Sheriff takes custody of him here.
Yes. That's all I have, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Does his attitude surprise you?
Got him here at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was very helpful.
Okay.
It's pretty good. He's a very nice guy. Huh?
Coming in? Am I on?
Oswald will be kept
Police Chief Curry has just announced that Oswald will be brought to the county courthouse tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Apparently, this wraps up most of the activity at the city courthouse tonight. The police chief also expects that final ballistics test, and he says he's very encouraged by the preliminary test, should be completed tomorrow. Now, as a final note, I have in my hand the official complaint called a beef sheet made out in the assassination of President Kennedy. And it says in part, the expired was riding in a motorcade with wife and Governor John Connally and his wife. Witnesses heard gunshot and saw the expired slump forward. More shots were heard, and the expired fell into his wife's lap. Governor Connally was also shot at this time. Car in which they were riding was escorted to Parkland Hospital by Dallas police officers. So, in official language, is summed up the death of a president.
While most of the activity on Saturday was taking place at Dallas Police Headquarters, the rest of the country was still in shock. Newspapers published their first extra editions since the end of World War II. Flags all over Dallas were flying at half-staff. People flocked to Dealey Plaza to see where it happened, to try and determine for themselves where the gunman was. The first of many wreaths began to appear in the plaza, and many local residents would begin recounting stories that would stay with them for the rest of their lives.
Father Huber, could you tell us of your most vivid recollections of last Friday?
Well, it was when I walked into the emergency room and saw there, lying on the portable table, the President of the United States, wounded by the assassin, wounded unto death, I should say, because we know that the wound was fatal.
How did he look at that time?
Well, he was covered with a sheet, but I removed it just about as far as, I'd say, halfway down his face in order that I might administer the rites of the church to him. His eyes were closed, and I could recognize him from pictures that I have seen. Of course, I saw him in the motorcade, but naturally didn't get too good a view as they passed by in a hurry. But he was easily recognizable.
Did Mrs. Kennedy say anything to you at that time?
Not at that moment. She was there during the time that I administered the sacraments to the president. And after that, she left the room, as I also did, and I spoke to her in the corridor, the adjoining corridor. I expressed my sympathy to her and the sympathy of my parishioners, and she thanked me for doing so and asked me to pray for her departed husband. I assured her that I would.
Father, at that time, what were your own feelings? How did you react personally?
I can scarcely express how I felt. I was just like everyone else. I was stunned at what had happened. We could see that on the faces of everyone present. They were overcome with sorrow and grief at the loss of our president, especially since it came in such a tragic manner.
Was the room at the time crowded? Were there a lot of people around?
You mean the emergency room? No, there were perhaps a dozen people in there, some doctors and policemen. Father Thompson, the priest who drove me to the hospital, Mrs. Kennedy, and I suppose some of the Secret Servicemen are there.
Do you believe you'll ever be able to forget those minutes?
I scarcely think so. I think they have indelibly impressed themselves upon me for as long as I live. I don't see how I could forget that moment.
Thank you very much.
Yes. You're welcome.
This is Mrs. Jean Hill of Dallas. Could you tell us what you saw?
Yes, Mary and I had come down to see the president this morning, and we tried to get a place where we could be away from everyone, and we, I guess, succeeded. As the car came down the hill toward us, he was on our side of the street, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat. They had a little dog between them looking at it, and just as the car came right in line with us, the president looked up, and just as he looked up, 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and this real odd look came over his face, and he pitched forward onto her lap. And she jumped up over him at that and screamed and said, "My God, he's been shot." And there was just an instantaneous, sort of an instant's pause, and in the motorcade it momentarily halted, and 3 or 4 more shots rang out, and they sped away real quickly. And by that time I became aware of Mary tugging on my foot saying, "Get down, they're shooting." And it hadn't registered. I'd been so busy looking at the president.
So you were in a very advantageous spot to see the president.
To see the president, but also to get shot.
How do you feel now? It's been several hours later. You've talked to the police. You've given your story several times. Do you still believe that something like this really did happen to you?
I don't think I ever could have believed it unless I had actually seen it. And when I saw the look come across his face, I knew that he'd been hit. But I don't think I could have believed it if I hadn't been right there and hadn't seen it.
Well, you're going to have to talk to the FBI now, and I understand you have some home chores as well.
Breakfast dishes and everything.
I think there are an awful lot of homes here in Dallas that have breakfast dishes to be done today.
Well, that's right. But I made a call to my friend in Oklahoma, and he told our governor of Oklahoma right away. Guess that's the first thing I wanted to do, was get those people in Oklahoma told about it.
Thank you very much.
Anyone who had been at the scene, anyone who had seen anything suspicious, anyone who had photographs or movies, all were asked to contact the Dallas Police Department. A collection was started for the widow of slain police officer J.D. Tippett, who had attempted to confront Lee Oswald in Oak Cliff. For the press, it was a time like no one could remember. The mobile video cruisers of the local stations were getting a workout like never before, not to mention the technicians and local press. The networks began sending in their people, and in the corridors at police headquarters you could see a young Dan Rather. Channel 5's Charles Murphy, now with ABC. Robert McNeil, then of NBC. CBS's Bob Schieffer in his Star Telegram days. And when things would get quiet in the corridor, the talk would turn to such things as who would be in the Cotton Bowl, Navy, or Pitt. There were very few female reporters. Channel 8 program director Jay Watson kept referring on the air to the boys in the newsroom. Police had recovered what they believed to be the murder weapon, and paraffin tests were being conducted to determine when it had been fired. Lee Oswald spent hours upon hours in interrogation, except for the brief time he was made available to the press. And at the end of that Saturday, the police believed they had the right man.
It is night now at the Dallas City Courthouse. Inside, the corridors so busy during the day are deserted. And perhaps Lee Harvey Oswald in his cell up on the 4th floor sleeps, if he can sleep tonight. Or perhaps he lies on his cot and thinks of his bitter protest made today to newsmen. His protest that he's being deprived of civil rights because he, accused of murdering a president, can't take a shower. This has been another busy day at the Dallas City Courthouse. It's been a day of important developments as police officials tighten the web of circumstantial evidence tighter and tighter around Oswald. He continues to proclaim his innocence. He shows some signs, perhaps, of cracking up under the strain. But police officials say they see no chance of an imminent confession. In all this long day, there's one thing that strikes me particularly. It's a figure, $12.78. Now that's the price that police say Oswald paid to buy a gun from a mail-order house in Chicago. $12.78 to kill a president of the United States. $12.78 to write a black page in American history. $12.78 to bring grief and uncertainty to millions of Americans, to rock the world. In the course of this day, police announced that they have photographic evidence that both a rifle and a pistol apparently used in the murders belong to Oswald. A picture of him carrying the rifle with the pistol slung on his hip. He was brought down to the 3rd floor for interrogation a number of times today. And each time he came through, he seemed more voluble, more eager to talk to reporters. From time to time, there was an almost silly smirk on his face as he shouted his innocence, said that he meant no harm to anyone, had never done a violent action to anyone in his life. But the gathering evidence continues to belie this protestation of innocence. The gathering evidence seems to indicate clearly that for whatever reason, a political cause, communism perhaps, this seems the most likely explanation, Oswald did indeed assassinate President Kennedy, wound Governor Connolly, and kill a Dallas policeman. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, he's scheduled to be moved from here to the county courthouse, there to await arraignment and, of course, eventual trial. Now, he says that he's not having adequate protection for his legal rights here in Dallas. He wants a certain New York lawyer who's defended many leftist causes. Failing that, he wants the Civil Liberties Union to represent him. The head of the Dallas Bar Association, H. Lewis Nichols, told reporters that he's convinced Oswald can receive a fair trial in Dallas. However, he is in effect being tried right now in that most vindictive of courts, the court of public opinion. And as the evidence gathers, so does the feeling that this man Oswald killed the President of the United States, bringing, as we say, grief and anguish and uncertainty to millions of Americans.
Dallas awoke to a crisp autumn morning on Sunday. Some would come downtown to Dealey Plaza. Some would go to church to observe special services in memory of the slain president. and others would stay glued to their television sets.
We're talking to some local residents. How do you feel on this beautiful but tragic morning?
Well, I feel very grieved, and it's very sad it happened in our city, but I don't think they should blame us, the Dallas people, which for it, because we were all gave him such a wonderful reception, and I believe he knew that before he was gone.
It certainly was a wonderful reception. Do you feel any bitterness or hatred toward the accused assassin?
Well, it's a feeling, it's rather hard to describe, and I just rather not say. It's just no words for it, really.
And you, sir?
Well, I think this was one of the greatest tragedies that could have come to America, and especially to the people of Dallas. I'm sure that people generally understand that the people and citizenship of this city deeply regret the tragedy that occurred here.
And these floral tributes, what's your reaction to them?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I think that shows the spirit of Dallas.
This is the assassination scene, where the presumed assassin stood with a rifle on the 6th floor of that Texas Book Depository and fired the fatal shots at the presidential caravan. This is a brilliant but cold Sunday morning in Dallas. We can see now, as the camera swings around, Commerce Street, the exact spot where, as the motorcade passed, the president was slain. You can perhaps now see also the flower wreath, the tributes that have been brought by the citizens of Dallas in memory of the president. Of course, within an hour from now, the presumed assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, will be brought to the Dallas County Courthouse, virtually to the scene of the crime. We stand here beside a cross, a white cross. We see in prayerful memory of our beloved president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, from the men of St. Bernard's Church. Now, many of these wreaths have been brought by the children of Dallas, and they contain touching little tributes. In memory of our Mr. President reads one, signed by Tammy and Cindy Saxon. One simply says, "We grieve." There's a flower wreath made out of paper, obviously homemade by some children, to our beloved president. And one says, "From the Federal Republic of Germany." Perhaps the most touching of all, it's a typical Texas phrase, "We are all so sorry." Now, in about an hour, to this scene will be brought Lee Harvey Oswald. Crowds are already beginning to gather. There were about 1,000 people here last night, expecting that he would be brought over them. The crowd last night was orderly, and no trouble is expected today. Once Oswald arrives, he'll be brought inside the courthouse, very quickly booked, then inside to his cell. There is, of course, the possibility that his cell will overlook the exact spot of the assassination. In that cell, Oswald will await a jury trial. Capital punishment is being asked. The man who will prosecute him has tried 24 capital cases. 24 capital cases, obtained convictions in 23, and now we see where Oswald will enter the courthouse. So far, as you know, he's refused to confess. He's been under intermittent questioning now for almost 2 days. The case against him is airtight, but he still doggedly holds out. Now we turn you back to the studio, WFAA.
And we're standing by awaiting the transfer of Oswald from city jail to county jail. And for that report, here is ABC's Bill Lord at the city jail.
Bill, what's the situation?
Well, I am presently in the basement of the Dallas Municipal Building, and it is like an armed camp. For the past half hour, scores of police have been filing past me, carrying riot guns and rifles. Police officials are frankly worried. They don't want anything to happen to Oswald. They firmly believe that he is the man who killed the president. They want to make sure he is safely transferred to the county jail and that he does stand trial and is convicted. The elevator that will bring him down from the 5th floor to the basement is just several feet away from me. When he comes through here, I will be able to see him and describe to you the scene. And that's the latest from City Hall.
Thank you, Bill. We have other remote facilities at the county jail now, awaiting the arrival of Lee Oswald from the city jail to the county jail. And for the situation there now, here is ABC's Roger Sharp reporting.
At the scene of last Friday's assassination, heavy Sunday traffic filing by along the Elm Street approach to the Triple Underpass. A crowd of several hundred Dallas citizens has gathered along the Houston Avenue side of the Dallas County Courthouse, the route of the presidential motorcade, the area where President Kennedy passed moments before the fatal shots rang out. This is a curious crowd, no obvious anger in their faces, but all possible security precautions have been taken. Policemen are stationed at every 15 feet along the entire block. This crowd, by the way, is considerably larger than the crowd that lined this very same street more than 46 hours ago when the presidential motorcade moved by. Police have blocked off the courthouse building itself. Sheriff Bill Decker, Dallas County Sheriff Bill Decker, has done everything possible to assure strict security. No one is inside the courthouse building, which houses the county jail, other than authorized personnel of the county sheriff's department, authorized federal officials, police officials, or accredited newsmen. This is the Texas School Book Depository building, directly catty-corner across Elm Street from the courthouse. It was on the 6th floor of this building, from the corner window, that the assailant, the assassin, fired the fatal shots from the bolt-action 6.5 millimeter Italian rifle. From that window, the shots covered a distance of approximately 250 to 300 feet, down to the point along the Elm Street approach to the underpass where the president was shot. From inside the courthouse compound, the motor entrance to the county sheriff's office, our cameras will show the approach of the car that will carry Lee Harvey Oswald into the courthouse building. He will be housed in the jail of this building. He may possibly be in a cell that will face the assassination scene. He will be within 100 yards of where President Kennedy died. Lee Harvey Oswald will spend most likely the next couple of months in this building. He will be here through his arraignment and through his trial, which will probably come sometime in early January.
We're inside the county courthouse, which the presumed assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, is soon to enter. He'll be taken immediately to a booking room, and a very historic booking will be made. Next, into an ID room, where he'll be photographed and fingerprinted. And then representatives of the press will have their first opportunity for a real front-to-front confrontation. Now, our big television cameras can't fit in that room, but we'll shoot that on sound film, and just as soon as that's processed, you'll be able to see it. After the press has its time with Oswald, he perhaps will be given a set of prison clothing, or he may be allowed to retain his own. And then he'll be brought to a cell. It'll probably be a special cell about 10 feet by 10 feet with a steel cot, a wash basin. That's about all. There's a possibility, only a possibility, that that cell may have a window giving out on the assassination site. This is Paul Good returning you to WFAA.
And we are still standing by, awaiting on the movement of the prisoner Oswald. We still have ABC's Bill Lord on the phone from City Hall. So once again, Bill Lord, what is the situation at ABC's at the City Hall?
Well, Bob, we are waiting and waiting. It is anticipated that he will be moved because extreme precautions have been taken. As I said before, the police are worried. They are so worried they've talked about the possibility of moving him in an armored vehicle, not just the normal sheriff's vehicle. And when this arrives, we'll know that this is the cue for Mr. Oswald to be brought downstairs and transferred to the car.
Bill, what about the arm precaution down there? Are there weapons visible?
There are many weapons visible. Riot guns and rifles are on display. The officers have them in their hands. They are ready to prevent anything they possibly can. There are perhaps 200 or 300 people outside the City Hall waiting to see the transfer of Oswald.
All right, very good, Bill. Thank you very much. Bill Lord, ABC, standing by at City Hall. And now I think once again we'll go down to the county jail and where Roger Sharp is standing by outside. Roger?
Outside of the county courthouse here, in the distance, some 300 feet from where I am standing, the area directly adjacent to the assassination point, the park area where during the past 24 hours, numerous floral wreaths have been laid by various Dallas citizens and organizations. The first floral arrangement was placed early yesterday morning by a lone man, Mr. Henry Stanton, who placed the flowers there in memory of the president with a simple inscription.
Bob Walker, WFAA-TV, Dallas, Texas, interrupting. There's been a shooting at Dallas Police Station as Oswald was being transferred. For details, Bill Lord, ABC at City Hall. Bill.
Just 1 minute ago, they were bringing Oswald out. He had apparently changed clothes. He was just going out the door, heading towards the armored car, and there was a bang. We believe it was a shot. And apparently, what has happened to it, we do not know at the present time. Policemen rushed to the scene, attempting to ascertain what had happened. Photographers were taking pictures. Is there someone down on the floor over there? Is there someone injured down on the floor? Apparently Oswald is the word we get, but this is unconfirmed because no one can really see what has happened. There was a shot, one shot, and everyone here jumped to see what had happened. Apparently Oswald was shot by a small elderly man. An elderly man with a small revolver. Where I'm standing...
How far are you away, Bill?
I'm about 20 feet away from apparently where Oswald is. If this is Oswald down on the floor, I cannot see him. There's a bench in between me. But they are examining a man who was on the floor, and the police look very concerned at this moment. The report is that an elderly man with a small revolver. Again, I caution that this I did not see, but these are the reports. There is someone down on the floor. A detective put his hand up on his forehead, shaking it. Oh, no, this has happened. There are 2 men down, apparently, but only one shot was fired. Can we get confirmation? Is that Oswald? They saw Oswald lying on the floor. He is injured. They're taking him back upstairs now. His shirt is ripped open.
Can you tell where he was shot, Bill?
No, we cannot tell that. No, we're not sure if that was Oswald. They believe that might have been the man who did the shooting. His shirt is ripped apart. Oswald is on the floor.
At the other end of town, Dallas Sheriff Bill Decker is awaiting the arrival of his new prisoner when he gets the word that something has happened.
Sheriff Decker, this is Roger Sharp of Channel 8 and WFAA-TV. Yes, sir. Sheriff, this, no, other than what has come over your TV coverage, I understand that he and a police officer both have been shot. Oh, there too? Yeah, and the report is also that it's a man in a black hat. That's all the information we have. Black hat? Black hat. That's all. Elderly man? Don't know. I couldn't tell you. So this man, whoever's got the TV coverage here, will have more of it than I will because it's coming direct right over the TV, live from the scene. All right. Bill, on whose custody? Still at the city. It's never been. He has not been delivered to me yet. He's still at one of the city. Where at the city hall is it happening? In the basement, I understand. Are they bringing the party? They're bringing all prisoners down from the. Yeah, they're jail down in that little room in the basement, right? They're now loading him in and loading him in an ambulance up there. So the TV man said just a minute ago. I understand, Roger, that the ambulance is going to be coming down Elm Street over there. In the meantime, why don't we talk?
It'll come Elm.
Down
It'll
Elm.
come Main. If the ambulance comes Main, it'll make a right turn here and go that way.
All right.
More caution and protection had been used for this man than anything had ever been seen in the city of Dallas, probably more than had been used to protect the President of the United States. In fact, Dallas City Hall is normally a public building, but today it was really under armed guard.
Jack.
Is this a confirmed report as to who did the shooting?
As far as I know, I just got it from Vic Robertson.
Vic Robertson from City Hall reports that Jack Ruby, the owner of the Carousel, which is a bar in Dallas, did the shooting. That's a report from City Hall. Evidently a report taken from that statement that Police Chief Jess Curry was just to give. But Jack Ruby, owner of the Carousel in Dallas, reportedly did the shooting. Repeating and bringing you up to date at approximately 20 minutes past 11 o'clock this morning as Lee Oswald was being moved from the City Hall, from Dallas City Jail to the County Jail. He had just passed ABC's Bill Lord, flanked by policemen. The moment he went out of Lord's sight, a shot rang out. Oswald slumped to the ground, and about that time, police grabbed a man, now identified as Jack Ruby of Dallas, ushered him by. Oswald, meanwhile, lying prostrate on the ground, clutching his left side. Oswald then was placed in an ambulance and sped out to Parkland Hospital. And so far, we have no report on his condition from Parkland Hospital. But we do have word that Jack Ruby, the owner of the Carousel in Dallas, was the person who shot Lee Oswald, the man who assassinated President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. There was some talk this morning of taking him in an armored car from the City Hall to the county jail. Whether that was to have been accomplished, we don't know. Bill Lord did not say anything about an armored car, except that he did hear this morning that it had to be carried in a sheriff's vehicle because he was going to the sheriff's jail. However, we do not know if that was to take place because Oswald never did get in the car. He was taken in an ambulance. He has been shot. A wild scene, of course, developed in the basement of the City Hall. At one point, detectives and police officers trying to get the wounded Oswald back into the booking office jammed themselves in the doorway and got stuck. Oswald was dressed in a pair of black trousers, a tan shirt, and black sweater. Oswald made no sound. He fell to the floor, clutching his side below the rib cage. It was not immediately known who the man was. We do have later information that it was Jack Ruby of the Carousel Bar in Dallas. Prior to bringing Oswald to the basement, police, using flashlights, searched the entire area of the basement. Officers with riot guns and rifles were posted throughout the basement area. A one-way drive from the street level to the basement and out the other side of the big square building in downtown Dallas was guarded at each end by uniformed officers. All persons entering the basement area were presumably checked and cleared by the police. All newsmen had been required to show credentials before being allowed into the basement area. In the excitement, with officers running around the basement, small man was hustled into the prison elevator and taken upstairs. Oswald's head wobbled back and forth as the stretcher was slid into the ambulance. An armored car was blocking the way of the ambulance and it had to be moved. One shot was fired. The shot could be heard plainly. In fact, you may have heard it. I heard it over the telephone. Dallas Sheriff Bill Decker says he understands a police officer has been shot too, possibly by the same bullet that did strike Oswald. Oswald was the only wounded person, however, brought to the emergency ward at Parkland Hospital. And Police Lieutenant George Butler has identified the man that did the shooting as Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner. And that's all that we have. That should bring you fairly much up to date. Oswald, repeating, was shot, was put on a litter, was holding his left side. An ambulance apparently had been standing by in case of emergency. It was rushed up, and Oswald put into it, taken to Parkland Hospital. He was going in the very emergency entrance out there where the body of President Kennedy was taken earlier and where the president died. Some more details as we have them. Oswald supposedly let out a cry of anguish and grabbed his stomach. It was a gasp. The man did put up a bit of struggle, but officers seized his gun away from him. And we have received word that Oswald is at Parkland Hospital at this time. Dean said, one man up there said that the suspect, Ruby, was mumbling as officers seized him. So far, we do not know the type of pistol that the man used. But, repeating, police have identified the man they seized as Jack Ruby, the owner of the Carousel Lounge, a striptease place on Commerce Street about 4 blocks from City Hall where the shooting took place. Oswald was shot about 2 miles from where he assassinated President John F. Kennedy last Friday, shortly before 1 o'clock Dallas time. An amazing thing that has happened in Dallas this morning. Lee Oswald has been shot. How seriously, we do not know. But he's been taken to Parkland Hospital. Repeating details as we have them. He was shot in the City Hall, in the police station. Supposedly, everybody had been cleared, and supposedly the area was fairly well checked. Dallas police had set up stringent security measures for Oswald's transfer. Of course, the transfer had been announced beforehand to the public, and the time the public was given was 10 o'clock this morning. The actual transfer took place an hour and 20 minutes later. Prior to bringing Oswald to the basement, police using flashlights had searched the entire basement area. Officers with riot guns and rifles were posted throughout the basement area. A one-way drive from the street level to the basement and out the other side was guarded at each end by uniformed police officers. All persons entering the basement area, presumably, had been checked and cleared by the police. All newsmen had been required to show credentials before being allowed into the basement area. In the excitement, with officers rushing around the basement, the man was hustled into the prison elevator and taken upstairs. Oswald's head wobbled back and forth as the stretcher was slid onto the ambulance. An armored car was blocking the way of the ambulance, and it had to be moved. And as far as we can ascertain, only one shot has been fired. Dallas Sheriff Bill Decker says he understands a police officer has been shot, possibly by the same bullet that struck Oswald. However, Oswald was the only wounded person. Yes. Walker. I'm on the network feed now. What? Bob Walker, WFAA-TV Dallas, with further details on the shooting of Lee Oswald. Police have now picked up Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner. They have identified him as the man that did the shooting. Reconstructing the scene for you best as we can. Oswald was just being taken down by our ABC man, Bill Lord, who was there on telephone at the time. Was going to be placed in an armored car. Definitely now that's been established. An armored car had to be moved before Oswald was taken to the hospital. He had just passed Bill Lord and had turned away from Lord's vision when one shot rang out. Then there was mass confusion for from 10 to 15 minutes. When the scene had cleared, an elderly man had been apprehended by police, taken upstairs in the elevator. Oswald had grabbed his side and had fallen to the floor, uttering a gasp, bleeding profusely from below the left rib cage. Oswald, it was clearly known then, had been shot, and what Dallas police had feared most had occurred. The most stringent security measures had been taken to get Oswald from the city jail to the county jail. In fact, last night there was some speculation as to whether he would be moved at all, but they decided to move him. They made a public announcement that he would be moved at 10 o'clock this morning. It occurred at 11:20 this morning, about an hour and 20 minutes late. But sometime things do not happen. Here is Jim Davidson, ABC News cameraman, who was there when the shooting occurred. Jim, describe what happened.
The transfer was occurring late. There were a number of officers around. There seemed to be unusual security precautions. At the last minute, they moved all of the cameramen outside the area, except for two of us, and we moved back instead of out to the driveway. I made the shot of Oswald coming out of the elevator through the grill work in the sergeant's office, followed him as far as I could, then moved to the glass doorways, and was shooting at the back of the officers surrounding him as they carried him toward moved him toward the car. At that time, a shot rang out. I suppose I was within 10 feet of the man. My camera was rolling, and I was rolling. The officers immediately grouped around Oswald and grouped around somebody else. It was a scuffle. Guns were drawn, and they rushed the man they captured and Oswald back into this office on the basement of the city hall. We backed up into the thing, and I shot through the grill work. I could not see Oswald, but he was surrounded by officers.
Who shot him? Man in a black hat. Man in a black hat, a police officer.
A police officer shot him.
No, a man in a black hat shot him. He also shot a policeman.
Shot a policeman, too? Well, he didn't mean probably to... Probably didn't intend to shoot the policeman, did they? It's on account of the...
That's right.
Where's he now? In the hospital?
He's taken to the hospital. No one knows right now.
They won't come this direction, will they? No.
There was a possibility they would, but they...
Were they ready to bring him down here?
Yeah. We're outside of the courthouse where a crowd of several hundred had gathered, awaiting the arrival of Lee Harvey Oswald. 10 blocks away at City Hall, that arrival stopped by apparently a bullet. This crowd, when word flashed through the crowd that Oswald had been shot, broke out into a cheer. The crowd has been dispersing for the past 5 minutes, many of them just getting the news. What's your reaction to hearing that suspect Oswald has been shot down?
Well, I can't hardly say what right now, but I think that people wanted a quick decision on his execution and get him put away.
Do you think that was the right justice for him?
Well, I think he should have been tried, but people sometimes take the law in their own hand on a thing like this.
Young man, how do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think anything can be too bad for him, and maybe trial wouldn't have done anything different. He would have been shot anyway.
What about you, Herman?
Well, maybe the Lord wanted it this way, and maybe he didn't. Maybe this is the best thing for him, I guess. Or maybe it's not. It's my opinion.
Ma'am, how do you feel about the shooting of Oswald?
Well, I just feel like this is too good for him. I think he should have had a trial. And I think he should have suffered more than what he has suffered now. And longer.
Were you drawn out here today by the prospect of getting a good look at him? Was that why you were here?
No, we just came down to see where the president was shot.
How do you feel about it now?
Well, I'm just real sad.
Sir, what is your reaction to what has happened this morning at City Hall?
Well, I think he got what he deserved if he's the one that did it.
Had you come down here to see him yourself?
No, I'm waiting for a train at 1 o'clock, and I just happened to stroll down to see the scene of the accident. I've walked down through here many times from Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you very much, sir. As you can see, a crowd genuinely not very sorry that Oswald has been the victim of an assassin himself. The crowd here agreeing that there should have been a trial, but apparently there is a sentiment, as evidenced by the cheer that did ring out when the word was flashed. The scene here of anticipation has quieted now, and the scene is much different. This is Roger Sharp on Houston Street, directly opposite the Dallas County Courthouse.
Hey, officer, officer. Yeah, he's got to be here. There he is. There he is. Here he comes.
Now the prisoner wearing a white sweater is changed from his T-shirt.
Officer, triangle.
Policemen rushed to the scene, attempting to ascertain what had happened. The photographers were taking pictures. Is there someone down on the floor over there? Is there someone injured down on the floor?
Apparently, Oswald.
Apparently, Oswald is the word we get, but this is unconfirmed because no one can really see what has happened. There was a shot. One. Oswald is. If this is Oswald down on the floor, I cannot see him. There's a bench in between me, but they are exactly involved. Again, I caution that this I did not see, but these are the reports. There is someone down on the floor. A detective put his hand up on his forehead, shaking it. Oh, no, no, this has happened. They saw Oswald lying on the floor. He is injured. They're taking him back upstairs now. His shirt is ripped open. That's not Oswald. No, we cannot tell that.
That apparently is the man who did the shooting.
No, we're not sure if that was
still someone else lying on the floor.
It may have been a man with arm. Is that Oswald on the shirt? Is ripped apart.
He's bleeding. He is shot. He is shot.
Oswald is shot.
It is Oswald. Can you see any evidence of the wound?
How serious is the injury? Now 11:24 here in Dallas. Being wheeled out. He was shot in the lower left side. And apparently looks like he was shot in the lower left side. He's being put in a police ambulance. Going in the ambulance now. And if they feared anything, they certainly didn't fear there was. Yes, they were worried, so worried.
This is the spot where Oswald's body was brought in to the inside of the police department in the basement. He was brought back in here after being...
I'm rolling.
This is a pan from the door leading out into the basement parking lot down to the spot where he was brought.
Take this little ball in and let's get some pictures in.
About the man that was carried upstairs. Was that the man that shot the man, or do you know?
That is the man that shot the man.
Did anybody know who he was? Was he recognized?
I don't have his name at the present time.
Did you recognize him as somebody that's been around here this morning waiting?
I didn't recognize him. I didn't see him well enough.
Was Oswald the only man who was shot?
As far as we know, he's the only man shot.
Only one shot fired?
Only one shot fired to my knowledge.
Could you tell what kind of gun it was?
No, they do have the weapon, but I didn't see the weapon.
This is the exit where Oswald came out, but he did not come out the way police had intended him. The armored car was to have come through here, taking Oswald to the county jail. When the shot occurred and an ambulance arrived, he was taken out here and driven to the hospital. There were about 200 people on hand at the time. The crowd has grown now, wanting to see just what had happened. Did you hear the shooting?
I heard a shot.
What do you feel about this?
Oh, terrible.
Do you all feel bad about this?
Very, very bad.
The police wanted to make sure this man got a fair trial.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what happened.
We're sorry that he wasn't tried.
Well, apparently he is injured, and they've taken him to the hospital.
We hope he lives where he can be tried and brought to justice.
Apparently a small man, an elderly man, came down with a small pistol.
We heard a shot.
You heard the shot?
Yeah, we heard the
What
shot.
happened out here after you heard the shot?
Well, we heard the shot, and then they pulled the armored car away. When they pulled the armored car away, why, everybody started running, and then all of a sudden this ambulance must have gone out another entrance, because we could see it up the street there. And everyone said, well, he must have been shot. And they started running to this building. I'm from out of town. I'm from Ohio. And we started running to this building here. We thought he was coming out this building here. So he has been shot. I just found out.
How bad is he injured?
This one? Did you hear the shot?
Oh, no, sir, I didn't hear.
You heard the shot?
I sure did, yeah.
How do you feel about this?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
Apparently Oswald was shot.
That's the way I understand it, yes.
Did anyone else hear the shot?
I heard it. I did. I heard it, and I told him, I said, I bet he got shot.
And he did. How do you feel about this?
I don't know. I hadn't reacted yet. I just don't know.
Dr. Tom Shires, Chief of Surgery at Parkland Memorial Hospital and Southwestern Medical School, advises me that Lee Oswald is currently undergoing surgery for a single gunshot wound that entered on his left side and did not exit. The patient is in extremely critical condition. Dr. Shires will make a personal statement when the surgery is completed.
Mr. Landrigan, you indicated that you had made some preparations for this eventuality.
As I said, our job is to be prepared. We had received word that there was quite a crowd down there, and on the possibility that there might be some type of disorder, we had alerted our emergency room to be prepared.
You expect him to be in surgery for several hours.
That's correct.
This requires the removal of the bullet?
This would include, presumably, the removal of the bullet, although, again, we're getting out of my field and into the field of medicine, and I'm not really qualified to discuss that.
Mr. Landry, have you said that Oswald has been conscious while he's been in the hospital?
Not to my knowledge. He was not conscious when he was brought in, and I think it's extremely unlikely. I cannot give you a definite answer, but to my knowledge, he has not been conscious.
Can you try to find out what organs the bullet struck and so forth?
This, Dr. Shires will cover. It will be impossible to give that information until after the surgery has been completed.
Did you see Oswald when he was brought in?
Yes, sir, I did.
How did he look? Could you describe for us how he looked?
Pardon me?
Could you describe for us how he looked when he did
He
come?
was extremely pale, ashen-colored. There was not a great deal of bleeding, obvious.
Was he still?
Yes, he was still, but he was breathing.
What was he wearing?
He wasn't breathing?
He was breathing.
Was he breathing with an oxygen mask?
The time that at the time that I saw him breathing, he did have an oxygen mask on. That's correct.
Were you able?
What was he wearing? The blanket over him, or he had street clothes on? Or what?
To the best of my recollection, he had street clothes on, and there was some hospital linen also on the cart. I don't have a very clear recollection of that. I'm sorry.
Were you able to see the gunshot wound?
No, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Soon, there's another statement.
The Assistant Administrator, Stephen T. Landrigan, is about to make a new statement on the current condition of Lee Oswald.
All right, gentlemen, I have a statement.
Mr. Landrigan.
He can make it. Dr. Tom Shires has sent word down that the patient, Mr. Oswald, has a massive injury to the abdomen with major vessel injury. Bleeding has been controlled. However, the patient developed a cardiac arrest and is now undergoing open chest cardiac massage. Let me elaborate. A cardiac arrest means a spontaneous stopping of the heart. The chest was then opened, and the surgeons are at the present time with their hands massaging the patient's heart to try to restore a normal heartbeat. I'll repeat that.
He's still alive.
He is still alive. A cardiac arrest does not mean that the patient is dead at that moment. Many patients who undergo cardiac arrest are revived and make a normal recovery. Dr. Tom Shires has just sent word down that Mr. Oswald has undergone massive injury to his abdomen with major vessel injury. Bleeding has been controlled. However, the patient has developed a cardiac arrest and is now undergoing open chest cardiac massage. This means that the patient's heart stopped beating and the chest was open, and the patients are massaging the surgeons are massaging the patient's heart by hand in an attempt to restore a regular heartbeat.
But some rhythm of beating has been restored?
I do not know. The message that I got is that they were presently massaging the heart. I'm sure that we will be advised the minute that there's a further development. Yeah.
I'm going back up there. Yeah, go up there.
As you heard, a cardiac arrest is the current condition of Lee Oswald. This means that a spontaneous stopping of the heart has occurred on the operating table, and doctors now are by hand massaging his heart. The doctor is quoted as saying there was massive injury to the abdomen from the gunshot wound, major vessel injury, but the bleeding had been controlled when the cardiac arrest occurred. Well, I would imagine that it will be only a matter of minutes before we get further word on the restoration of at least a regular heartbeat or on the condition at the moment of Lee Oswald. Earlier, they had described his condition here as extremely critical. He was expected to be in the operating room for several hours after the operation or the possible death of Lee Oswald. Dr. Tom Shires, Chief of Surgery at Portland Memorial Hospital, will come to this room to make a statement. He has been given heavy blood transfusions, massive blood transfusions, since being brought into Portland Memorial Hospital at 11:32 Central Standard Time. He was taken in the operating room for surgery 10 minutes later at 11:42 after spending those 10 minutes in the emergency room number 2, trauma room number 2, where Governor John Connally was only 47 hours earlier, and only 10 feet from trauma room 1, where President John Kennedy died. This is Roger Sharp reporting from Portland Memorial Hospital.
A short while later, there is another update on Oswald's condition.
I'll repeat that statement. I have been advised that Mr. Oswald is still alive and has been placed on a pacemaker. A pacemaker is an electronic instrument which sends electrical impulses into the heart, which causes the heart muscles to expand and to contract and restores the normal rhythm of the heart. Are there any questions?
What time did that come?
This came in at about 1:12. Mr. Dutton just brought it into me, one of our administrative assistants.
Improvement or a...
This represents an improvement in that the man is still alive and his heart had stopped, the last statement that had been made.
This means the open chest massage is at least temporarily successful.
Apparently so.
That latest statement from Stephen Landrigan, the administrative assistant at Portland Memorial Hospital, on the condition of Lee Oswald. The information coming from the second-floor operating room of the hospital, where the team of surgeons led by Dr. Shires is working desperately to save the life of the man who is accused of taking the life of the president.
There's a report that the patient has expired from outside. This is not true. As you know, at 1:12, we had a report that the patient had undergone cardiac massage and had been put on a pacemaker. Ordinarily, this is done after the patient's heart responds to the massage. And at the same time, the message is sent down that he is alive. I'd like to emphasize that. As soon as there is a change in that status, we will be advised immediately. It's impossible for anyone outside of this room to find out before you do.
A late statement from Stephen Landrigan denying the reports that Lee Oswald has died on the operating table here at Portland Memorial Hospital. His condition remains extremely critical. He is now undergoing electronic impulses to the heart from a machine known as a pacemaker. This would indicate a slight improvement of the cardiac arrest, which occurred some 18 minutes ago. The massage of the heart by the team of surgeons apparently brought about at least a faint heartbeat to the point that this pacemaker machine could be brought into use. providing the electronic impulses to the heart to try to maintain a heartbeat. Earlier, the chief surgeon, Dr. Shires, had reported that Oswald had suffered massive injury to the abdomen, major vessel injury, but the bleeding had been controlled. As we told you earlier, Oswald has been receiving constant blood transfusions ever since he first arrived here at 11:32. He was given transfusions in the emergency room and has now been on the operating table for more than an hour and a half. The officials of Portland Memorial Hospital deny all reports that Lee Harvey Oswald has died. They say he is still alive at this moment. This is Roger Sharp at Portland Memorial Hospital in Dallas.
And then Dr. Tom Shires comes down.
Is he alive, Doctor? No. Let Dr. Shires make his statement, please.
When did he die, Doctor?
He died at 1:07 our time, 13:07, of his gunshot wound. Would you like to ask questions or what? Yeah, Mr. Oswald died at 1:07 our time in the operating room of the gunshot wound which he had received.
Would you describe his last moments on the operating table, please?
The last moments were rather hectic. He had a cardiac arrest from all the massive blood loss, the massive injury. The last few minutes were spent in cardiac resuscitation, open heart massage, electrical defibrillation, internal defibrillation, and finally there were absolutely no signs of life at all, fixed dilated pupils and all the signs of death.
How many surgeons were working on him at the time?
There were 4 actually operating Scrub at the same time, besides the others.
How long after the cardiac arrest did he die?
I don't really know. I imagine 20 or 30 minutes.
Did he ever talk to you or say anything?
No, he never regained consciousness at all. In fact, before surgery, we had no blood pressure, a few agonal respiratory efforts, and that was all. During the operation, once we got control of the major vessels, the aorta, the vena cava, the kidney injury, we had a blood pressure for a time, but then we had the cardiac arrest, which was obviously incident to massive blood loss, the anoxia that had occurred. This was, again, a fatal wound that he received.
Was there ever any chance for him to recover?
Well, there's always a chance as long as you have signs of life, and we had at least a heartbeat preoperatively, so there was a slight chance, so we tried.
What was your impression when you first saw him, though? Did you have any hope on your first impression for recovery?
Not much, although, again, there's always a chance. The course of the bullet wound through the upper abdomen was such one could feel the bullet under the skin on the right side, the entrance wound in the upper abdomen on the left side. We guessed that he had injured all the major vessels in the between space, and sure enough he had. What organs? From left to right, this went through the spleen, then into the pancreas, then the aorta, the vena cava, the right kidney, right lobe of the liver, out into the subcutaneous area. It's just transected.
Was the bullet
under the skin, just under the skin.
Under the skin on the right side?
On the right side.
Spleen and then the aorta.
Spleen, aorta, vena cava, pancreas, kidney, liver.
Dr. Shires, do you know what caliber bullet it would have been?
Yeah, it looked like a .38 caliber bullet. We removed the bullet at the end.
After death, you removed the bullet?
Yes. Well, yes.
It looked like what, sir?
.38 caliber. Just guessing.
You didn't have blood pressure before surgery?
No, no blood pressure at all.
Did you say that he did have damage on investigating? You did find damage in all those organs?
Every one of them.
What was the immediate cause of death?
The gunshot wound. The final cause of death was massive injury with massive blood loss and then cardiac arrest.
Doctor, would you say that Oswald might have had a weak heart to begin with?
No way of telling. It actually did not appear to be damaged previously. Now, when we did the cardiac massage, the problem was a flabby heart, which was indicative of massive blood loss and anoxia, which he sustained from the time of the injury.
From your observation, what would you say was his general condition besides the gunshot wound? In other words, was he physically a well man?
On brief inspection in the emergency room, apparently so.
Who did the massage?
Oh, all of the operating surgeons. I did. Dr. Perry, Dr. McClellan.
Who are the
Jones.
operating surgeons?
Dr. Perry, Dr. McClellan, Dr. Jones. There were 3 others besides me.
They just happened to be in the building at the time?
We were all in the building.
Did you first inform his relatives of the death before you came here?
No, I came right here from the operating room, escorted from the operating room.
Doctor, those in the operating room, were any of those same people present at the time of the president's death?
Yes, as you know, Dr. Perry did the tracheotomy on President Kennedy.
Malcolm Perry.
That's right.
Dr. Shires, did you have a pacemaker on him at the time he died?
Yes, we had a pacemaker. Until there were absolutely no signs of life. How long that was, I don't know, several minutes.
Defibrillator still on him?
Defibrillator was used several times,
He
yes.
did determine death was at about 1:07 p.m.
That's right, 107. Dr. Shires, I would like to ask Dr. Shires to dictate a short statement to our secretaries, which we will reproduce and get into your hands so that everybody can have these details, if that's agreeable with you, Dr. Shires. Would you like to do that now?
You have heard the story from Dr. Tom Shires, the chief of surgery here at Portland Memorial Hospital, on the death of Lee Oswald. Oswald entered the hospital at 11:32 p.m.
And get the statement dictated and typed, and on the reproducer we'll have it to you. It shouldn't be more than just a very few minutes.
Stephen Landrigan, the assistant administrator of the hospital. As we were saying, Dr. Shires announced the time of death of Lee Oswald at 1:07 p.m. Eastern, or rather Central Standard Time. He entered the operating room at 11:42 and apparently was alive on the operating table for an hour and a half before death. Many of the same people, including Dr. Malcolm Perry, who were present at the time of the death of the president 2 days ago, were present today on the second floor operating room when Lee Harvey Oswald, the man accused of murdering the president, expired. This is Roger Sharp reporting from Portland Memorial Hospital.
It is Sunday, November 24th, 1963. A Dallas nightclub owner, Jack Ruby, has shot Lee Harvey Oswald. Doctors at Parkland Hospital have tried in vain to save the life of the accused presidential assassin. A spokesman at Parkland says Oswald's body is still in surgery. The bullet will be turned over to police. And Channel 8's news director, Bob Walker, is on the air.
Lee Harvey Oswald is dead. The assassin who felled the president 48 and a half hours ago is dead of an assassin's bullet. And for that story, we switch to ABC's Roger Sharp at Dallas Parkland Hospital.
24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald died here at Parkland Memorial Hospital exactly 33 minutes ago at 1:07 Central Standard Time. He entered the hospital at 11:32, spent 10 minutes in the emergency room before being taken to the operating table at 11:42. He suffered a cardiac arrest in the midst of surgery, and a team of 6 or 7 doctors, led by Dr. Tom Shires, the chief of surgery here at Parkland Memorial Hospital, performed open-heart massage to attempt to bring Oswald back to life. He survived the cardiac arrest long enough for them to attach a pacemaker machine providing electronic impulses to the heart, but this failed to bring him back to life, and he expired on the operating table at 1:07. Dr. Shires told us a few moments ago that the bullet had entered the body in this area, going through the spleen, and being lodged in this area of the body. The bullet was removed. It appeared to be a .38 caliber. As you know, it was fired from a pistol. The brother of Lee Oswald was in the hospital at the time of death. He was being held in a room incommunicado at the request of the United States Secret Service. Because of the attack and assassination of Lee Oswald, there has been strict security here at the hospital, all newsmen and reporters being searched by police at every door. The doctors reported earlier that there was massive injury to the abdomen and major vessel injury, but the bleeding before the cardiac arrest had been controlled, and there was a chance, a faint chance at best, that Lee Oswald may have made it. The same doctors for President Kennedy, at least one doctor, Malcolm O. Perry, was in attendance at the death of Oswald. Oswald has been taken from the operating room to the morgue here at Portland Memorial Hospital. There was no information on any religious rites for him at the request of his family, and it is not known if there were any last rites performed. He had expected to be on the operating table for several hours, as I mentioned before. The situation here now is calm. Lee Harvey Oswald is dead. The story has dramatically changed. This is Roger Sharp reporting from Portland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, Texas.
At 1 o'clock on November 22nd, Lee Harvey Oswald shot dead John Fitzgerald Kennedy. At 1:07 on November 24th, Lee Harvey Oswald was dead of an assassin's bullet. This is Bob Walker, WFAA-TV Dallas. Now back to Howard K. Smith, ABC, Washington.
We continue our report on the ceremonies here in connection with the funeral services of the late president.
The public has so far been held behind the door which you now see, which is the door that leads out onto the East Capitol steps. In the very doorway, the group you see is members of the press, many photographers, newsmen. They are about to be ushered into the room, and then directly behind them will come this great stream of persons who've gathered on the Capitol grounds. The plaza has been kept clear. The crowds have been kept on the grounds, on the lawn, in the park, and a rope cordon and channel has been made to slowly and in an orderly way bring them in. As they come up the Capitol steps, they will be walking far abreast, and as they enter the doorway, which you now see, they will divide to two abreast, and then going around the circle of velvet ropes, which has been placed around the outside of the rotunda, they will go single file. There are
Bob Walker, WFAA-TV in Dallas. We have further details from Parkland Hospital, and for that report, we switch to Paul Good.
You good? A conflicting portrait emerges of Jack Ruby, the man who killed the assassin of President Kennedy. First, some simple facts. 52 years old, comes from a family of 8, originally from Chicago, runs nightclubs here in Dallas. Now his sister, Mrs. Eva Grant, said that Mr. Ruby frankly loved President Kennedy. She said that he was so upset by the murder that he was physically sick inside. He put an ad in the Dallas papers closing down both his clubs in memoriam. Mrs. Grant, who just recovered from a major operation and did not want to be photographed, went on to say that she told her brother she was afraid the communists might kill Lee Oswald. And today, the sister worries that perhaps that planted a seed in her brother's mind to carry out the killing. Now, some conflicting opinions. A bail bondsman who operates just across the street from the city courthouse where today's killing took place says that Jack Ruby was a man with a very vicious and a very short temper, that only a few weeks ago this bail bondsman was having a friendly discussion with a man in front of his office. Jack Ruby didn't like what the man was saying and attacked him. Now, another side of Jack Ruby. A cab driver told us that when customers at his club ordered a taxi cab and didn't show up, and the taxi came there on a wasted trip, Jack Ruby would leave a $50 for the cab drivers so they wouldn't go away empty-handed. This is the portrait of Jack Ruby, a man who was generous enough to love and today was bitter enough to hate and kill. This is Paul Good in Dallas, going back to Bob Walker.
Lee Harvey Oswald is dead of an assassin's bullet himself. And for further details, we take you to Roger Sharp at Dallas Parkland Hospital.
Roger? Portland Memorial Hospital in suburban Dallas, Texas, where 54 minutes ago, Lee Harvey Oswald died on the operating table 47 hours after the death in this same hospital of President John Kennedy. He arrived here at the hospital at 11:32 after suffering the gunshot wound at City Hall. He spent 10 minutes in emergency room 2, directly across the hall from emergency room 1, where the president died 2 days ago. He was taken to the operating room at 11:42, about an hour after that. After suffering massive injury to the abdomen and major vessel injury, the bleeding had been controlled, but Oswald suffered a cardiac arrest. In other words, his heart stopped. The team of surgeons, led by Chief Surgeon Dr. Tom Shires, then began massaging the heart, trying to bring Oswald back to life. He lived for 20 to 30 minutes after the cardiac arrest, dying at 1:07 Central Standard Time in the operating room. The team of 4 or 5 surgeons had worked desperately to save his life, although Dr. Shires did admit that there was only faint hope when he arrived here. He gave the cause of death definitely as that of the gunshot wound. The bullet was removed from the back of Oswald. It had entered from the left abdomen, causing damage to several vital organs and lodging against the skin in the rear. It was a .38 caliber bullet, and as you know, it was fired by a pistol. Lee Oswald's brother is still in the hospital in the custody of Secret Service agents. He has refused to make any statement on the death of his brother. The body of Lee Oswald remains on the operating table on the second floor of this hospital. He was given every possible degree of attention here. The team of medical people present included Dr. Malcolm O. Perry, who worked so very desperately over the president on Friday. The hospital provided every service to make life possible for Lee Oswald, but it came to a violent end at 1:07 Central Standard Time. This is Roger Sharp reporting from Portland Memorial Hospital in Dallas.
The alleged assassinator of Lee Oswald is Jack Ruby. He's an alias Jack Rubenstein who came to Dallas 16 years ago and changed his name. Ruby is no stranger to Dallas police. He has been arrested several times, but mostly on minor violations, dance hall violations, violation of the Texas liquor law. He lived alone in what is described as a rather nice Dallas apartment. He has not been married. He did not drink or smoke, was careful of what he ate, described by friends who knew him best as an extrovert and as very likable man. And now we're going to show you some of the actual film taken as Lee Oswald was brought down in the elevator. The elevator coming down to take him to Dallas County Jail. This occurring just prior to his shooting. This now in the basement, Dallas Police Department. He's coming in to be preceded by several detectives. Oswald wearing a black sweater. Homicide Captain Will Fritz on your extreme right. And there is Oswald being led across, being let out. This is the idea, the checking in room where prisoners are checked in when they first come in. Now the shooting has just occurred. Get him out of here, they yelled. Bringing him inside. He was lying on the floor just prior, now back inside the room that he just left, being let out to go to Dallas County Jail.
Again, I caution that this I did not see, but these are the reports. There is
Utter disbelief on the faces of Dallas police officials at this time.
Hand up on his forehead,
Such security had been provided for Oswald, not known before. Now they're rushing him out into an elevator. This is Jack Ruby, the man accused of shooting Oswald. Into an elevator he goes. To be sped up and further interrogated.
No, we're not sure if that's still someone else lying on the floor. Is that Oswald on the floor?
He is shot.
He is shot. Oswald. It is Oswald.
He is shot. It is Oswald. It is Oswald, a policeman reports.
Now 11:24 here in Dallas.
He is still alive at this time, wheeling his body out to an ambulance, badly wounded, This is under the city building in the basement. That's why it is so dark in here. An armored car had been waiting for him to transport him to the jail. And the ambulance finally pulling out. There's a spot where he was shot, the bloodstains on the floor at Dallas City Jail.
The police department in the basement. He was brought back in here after being...
Now Parkland Hospital waiting for the ambulance to arrive, bringing Oswald. Police car and now the ambulance. Now Oswald being brought out of the ambulance, taken to emergency ward at Parkland Hospital. Same entrance, same door, of which President Kennedy was taken just 2 days ago. The confusion. Doctors running down the hall to emergency. Jack, alleged person who assassinated Lee Oswald, is alleged to own this bar in Dallas. It is a bar, burlesque house. Police officer.
Armored car to ride with the suspect to the county jail. I knew that they would bring him out. They had cleared the way, and then I heard the shot. I didn't see the gun. I just saw the struggle that ensued. I immediately ran from the armored car down the ramp and tried to help subdue the prisoner that had shot Oswald.
Did the man who shot him struggle hard?
He was struggling, but there was a number of officers that were subduing him.
Now, where was Oswald shot?
In the lower left, I believe it was the lower left abdomen.
Did he fall to the ground immediately?
I didn't see him fall. But he wasn't unconscious by the time I got here. He had the appearance of being unconscious.
Did it seem like a grave wound?
I couldn't say.
Did either Oswald or the suspect say anything?
I didn't hear anything.
Now, do I believe that you recognize this man after the capture?
Yes, sir.
Did I understand you to say that if you had seen him before, you would have ejected him?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Because the only thing that was supposed to be in the basement here, in this vicinity, were pressmen, the television people, and officers. That was our instructions from the chief, that no one was to be in the basement or around the premises, except pressmen and officers.
Well, now, as Oswald was escorted out, were the policemen to either side of him? Weren't there any in front of him?
Yes.
How did the man get by the policeman in front?
The only thing I know is that someone said he jumped. Now, I didn't look around until I heard the shot and I saw the smoke. And then the struggle was going on.
Thank you very much. Paul Good, ABC, at the Dallas City Prison.
And now this amazing picture, the instant before the shooting, taken in the basement. That's Oswald between two detectives, Jack Ruby on the right with the gun aimed almost at Oswald's heart. On the face, on the right side, you see Oswald grimacing with pain. He has just been shot. He has just been shot, allegedly by Jack Ruby of Dallas. And now Oswald placed in a stretcher in the basement just prior to being taken to Parkland Hospital, where he died at 7 minutes past 1 o'clock. This, again, the accused killer, Jack Ruby, who allegedly shot Lee Oswald. Bob Walker, WFAA-TV in Dallas.
At Parkland Hospital, Dr. Tom Shires, who was the surgeon operating on Lee Oswald, has come down to make a formal statement to reporters.
We have prepared a statement which we read over and feel like is accurate. We first saw Mr. Oswald in the Parkland Emergency Room, number 2, around 11:30 a.m. today, Sunday, November the 24th. At that time, he was unconscious. He had no blood pressure, but made agonal respiratory efforts. The endotracheal tube was placed by Dr. M.T. Jenkins, the chief of anesthesia. Intravenous fluids and blood were started immediately. There was on inspection a gunshot wound entrance over the left lower lateral chest wall, and the bullet could be felt in the subcutaneous tissue on the opposite side of the body over the right lower lateral chest cage. It was probable from his morbid condition that the bullet had injured major blood vessels within the abdomen below the diaphragm. Consequently, he was taken immediately to the operating room. Through a midline abdominal incision, the abdomen was explored. Several liters of blood were immediately encountered. Exploration revealed that the bullet had gone from left to right, injuring the spleen, pancreas, aorta, vena cava, right kidney, and right lobe of the liver. The bullet then came to rest in the right chest wall in the subcutaneous area. The major bleeding points were then identified and control was obtained. At this time, there was a low but measurable blood pressure and heartbeat. Massive transfusions were being given in multiple sites at this time. At this point, Dr. Jenkins informed us that he had lost blood pressure and pulse suddenly, and that he felt cardiac arrest had occurred. The left chest was immediately opened, and the heart was found in standstill. Cardiac massage was started promptly, and a pulse was obtained with massage. Cardiac fibrillation rapidly ensued, and in spite of intracardiac drugs and defibrillation, no effective heartbeat was ever established. When the signs of death were absolute, he was pronounced dead at 1:07 p.m. The patient never regained consciousness and obviously died of a massive injury from a close-range shotgun wound. Gunshot wound, sorry.
Dr. Shires, when you first saw Mr. Oswald, did you believe then that there was a chance of saving him?
As long as there are any signs of life, there's always a chance of saving someone. We thought the prognosis was extremely grave, but it's always worth a chance.
Dr. Shires, was it you, sir, who pronounced Oswald dead?
Yes.
When was the bullet removed, Tom?
The bullet was removed at the end of the procedure.
What kind of a bullet was it, sir?
Just guessing, it looked like a .38 caliber bullet.
What has happened to that slug now?
I don't know. I handed it to the operating room supervisor, and it left the operating room. I don't really know.
Been given to the police.
Was there a brief on him?
Not that I saw, but we were very busy. So I really don't know.
Doctor, about what time did his heart stop beating?
About what time did his heart stop beating?
It's on the anesthesia record. I don't know. It was several minutes, of course, of defibrillation and attempts at resuscitation. I would guess 20 minutes or so.
What is precisely is fibrillation?
Fibrillation is a uncoordinated, erratic, segmental motion of the heart that produces no effective heartbeat or output.
Was this erratic or a bad sign?
This is a bad sign.
How do you attempt defibrillation?
Electrically, with electric jolt from a control voltage of electricity.
Is that the machine that was called the pacemaker? It's an electronic impulse?
We use the defibrillator first and then the pacemaker, but even the pacemaker would not produce an effective cardiac beat.
After it became fibrillating, did you ever restore the rhythm of the heart?
Not except by massage. That was all. Actually, the internal rhythm effectively was never restored.
Every time you stopped the massage, the heart would fibrillate again?
That's right.
Doctor, what is the vena cava?
The vena cava is the major vein draining the entire lower half of the body.
Largest in the body?
The largest vein.
Larger than the aorta?
Well, the aorta is the largest artery coming away from the heart.
Doctor, was Mr. Oswald's heart a normal, healthy heart?
Prior to this injury, from what we saw of it, it was, yes.
Injury to the vena cava and the aorta in such a way as this patient, is that usually a fatal injury?
Yes, it is.
How long did you try massage?
I don't really know. We tried it until there were signs of death, fixed dilated pupils, and the other signs of neurologic and death.
What are they?
This was probably 20 or 30 minutes.
You kept massaging that long?
I imagine it was at least that long. I really don't know.
Did you yourself just do the massage, or did
No,
you...
this was rotated between all the members of the operating team, including Dr. McClellan here. Yes, Dr. Robert McClellan, who's Assistant Professor of Surgery at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. Dr. Ronald Jones, who's Chief Resident in Surgery at Parkland Hospital here, and Dr. Malcolm Perry, who's also Assistant Professor of Surgery at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. One initially, and then two. It's just a guess. Looked like a pretty good-sized slug, and we had heard that it was a pistol.
Working Parkland, you get to know them pretty well.
That's right. We've seen quite a few bullet wounds.
Were all you gentlemen in the hospital at the time that Oswald was brought in?
Dr. Perry was in the hospital, was the first one actually with him, I believe, and I was watching television and heard the announcement and came right on out. And
I was in the hospital at the time, in the operating room.
Dr. Perry, you were here?
That's correct.
Dr. McClellan, you were here?
I was not. I came right out after I heard the announcement.
Dr. McClellan, you and Dr. Perry also attended President Kennedy, is that correct?
That's right.
Were one of you in the emergency room when Mr. Oswald came?
Dr. Perry was.
Yes, I was there.
Would you describe what he looked like at that time?
As Dr. Shires noted, he appeared lethally injured and was moribund at that time.
The team of doctors who struggled for an hour and a half to save the life of Lee Harvey Oswald, talking with reporters at Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas. Dr. Tom Shires and the White Co, Chief of Surgery at Parkland Memorial Hospital and Southwestern Medical School, and the other attending doctors, Dr. Robert McClellan, Dr. Malcolm O. Perry, who also attended President Kennedy, and Dr. M.T. Jenkins, who also was present at the time of the president's death. As we said earlier, Oswald was brought into the hospital at 11:32 Central Standard Time today. He spent some 10 minutes in Emergency Room 2, directly across the hall from the so-called Trauma Room 1, or Emergency Room 1, where President Kennedy died, almost exactly 48 hours earlier. The death of Oswald came at 1:07. The body remains here at the hospital. This is Roger Sharp, reporting for ABC from Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, Texas.
Bob Walker in the studios of WFAA-TV at Communications Center in Dallas for further reports on the disposition of Jack Ruby. We take you now to Bill Lord at Dallas City Hall.
This is the now well-known corridor on the third floor of the Dallas Municipal Building. It is down this corridor that during the past 2 days, Lee Harvey Oswald was taken for interrogation in room 317, the Bureau of Homicide. He was brought through this door from the elevator. The elevator goes up to the 5th floor jail. And just moments ago, Jack Ruby was brought down, taken from here to questioning in homicide. Again, the corridors have filled with newsmen, almost a complete repetition of scenes we've seen here Friday and Thursday. The accused, Jack Ruby, was charged this afternoon with murdering Lee Harvey Oswald. It was with malice aforethought. He killed him with, according to the complaint, a .38 caliber snub-nose gun. Ruby had been convicted of minor offenses during the past years, one of them carrying a concealed weapon in 1954. So another investigation is underway here in Dallas. We wait to see what happens. This is Bill Lord reporting from City Hall.
A short while later, Jack Ruby is brought down the hall past reporters on his way back up to his cell.
He is handcuffed. He's going to be taken upstairs to the jail. They've opened the door and he's going to the jail elevator. This is the first interrogation down here on the 3rd floor by members of the homicide squad. Again, this scene very similar to scenes we've seen before, repeated yesterday and the day before, as Lee Harvey Oswald was interrogated. What we know about this gentleman is as follows. He is accused of murdering Oswald. He used a .38 caliber snub-nosed revolver. Ruby had been convicted earlier on minor offenses concerning his business of running a dance hall. He had also been convicted in 1954 of carrying a concealed weapon. Some additional information we found out is that early this morning, according to a Dallas police officer, they received the following call. Quote, "I don't want any problems. I don't want any policemen to get hurt. But there's one group that's going to get, when we leave a word out, that man," referring to Oswald, "when he is transferred." This call reportedly came in early this morning.
Jack Ruby was questioned by Captain Will Fritz, the same man who led the interrogation of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Captain, is there any doubt in your mind that Oswald was the man who killed President Kennedy?
No, sir. There's no doubt in my mind about Oswald being the man. Of course, we'll continue to investigate and gather more and more evidence, but there's no question about it.
Is the case closed or not, then, Captain?
The case is cleared, but we'll be anxious to find out more about him, all we can find out.
I think there was anyone else connected with Oswald in the matter?
Well, now, not that I know of. That's right.
Did Jack Ruby say how he got into the basement here today?
He didn't tell me that.
Did he say he had planned it for a while, Captain?
There's some of those things I can't answer for you, and he, of course, had talked to an attorney, and there's certain things that he don't want to tell me.
He said why?
He did tell me that he'd build up the grievance.
He said why?
No, he did not say why. Only that he built up a grievance.
Build up a grievance. Has he been calm and rational?
He seemed rational. Seemed very rational. Yes.
George, Senator, I've been waiting out there all afternoon.
I think they're finished with him. Ask him, I tell you. I think they're finished with him. Ask him out in there.
He said he has been.
That's Captain Will Fritz of Homicide, the man who was responsible for swearing out the complaint against Lee Harvey Oswald and who this afternoon swore out the complaint against Jack Ruby. Once again, a scene of confusion and pushing and shoving reporters as they attempt to get to people to find out more facts on the case. This is Bill Lord reporting from Dallas City Jail.
Jack Ruby's sister has come down to visit her brother for the first time. She also must make her way through hordes of reporters.
She is being supported by two of her friends.
You're right. Don't say anything. Let's just take it in.
She is saying, "I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything." She is in tears as she goes toward the elevator door. This door, as she goes through, will take her to the elevator that will take her up to the 5th floor so she can see her brother. There is a heavy crush of newsmen, as you can see from our pictures. They are not taking her now to the police elevator, which we expected. Apparently she's going up the normal way, which is the public elevator that we've all been using to go between the ground floors and the upper stories here. She is now going up, passing by our cameras in tears, having been informed that her brother has admitted shooting Lee Harvey Oswald. Photographers are still crowding around her. She wants to go up and see her brother. That is the only thing we can get from her. Her hands are trembling as she holds on. She puts her head down on the hand of a friend who is supporting her. Her head is covered with a kerchief. She has red hair. She's now going up the stairs. She's entering the elevator. And she is now inside the elevator in near nervous breakdown. She will see her brother up there. That is the situation as it stands now at the City Hall. The City Hall complete with confusion. This is Bill Lord reporting.
Accompanying Jack Ruby's sister is newsman Jim Underwood of KRLD TV.
All right, my name is Jim Underwood. Okay, I have been with Jack Ruby's sister this afternoon, and I am going to be with her in a few minutes when Captain Fritz gives her the okay to go upstairs and see Ruby in his cell. Ruby will not be brought down here to talk to his sister. So his sister will be coming out here of the homicide department in a few minutes, and then she'll be taken upstairs, and I'm going to go with her to see Ruby upstairs.
What emotion did she display after hearing of the news?
No, this isn't exclusive, is it?
No, I mean...
I'm telling you what I know now.
No one else can go up with her, so in what capacity are you functioning?
She has requested me to go with her just to help her through the crush here, and she has been acquainted with me for some years in seeing me on television locally here in Dallas.
Will you go in the cell with Ruby?
I do not think that I will. She has requested that she see Ruby alone.
What has been her reaction to this news? Is that correct?
If you want to call it that, yes, that would be as close as anything. She has
made any arrangements for her story or his story through your news media?
I presume that our news media will carry what I find out, yes.
And you made no financial arrangements with her?
I am employed by KRLD News, both radio, television. We are part of the Dallas Times Herald, so the financial arrangement's been made for a number of years as far as what I find out.
How did she react to this news?
She does not know yet what's going to happen. She does not know yet she's going up to the jail.
But she does know that a complaint of murder has been placed against her brother. How did she react to that?
She does not know that yet either.
She doesn't know that a complaint of murder has been filed?
She does not know that yet.
Has she not been listening to her radio?
She has not. I have been with her since about 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we've been sitting in her apartment, and she has had both radio and television off.
She does know that he is thought to be the one who shot Lee Oswald.
She knows that he did shoot Lee Oswald.
She knows that he did, that yet he has not confessed, but she thinks that he did.
Captain Will Fritz just told me that Ruby has said that he did it, that it was his gun, and that he had built up a tremendous grievance over the death of the president.
Is there any hint whatsoever of any type of collusion between Ruby and Oswald or any international plot whatsoever?
Mrs. Grant, Ruby's sister, has told me that she is positive that Ruby was not acquainted with Oswald and never has been acquainted with Oswald.
What is her first name?
Her first name is Eva. Her middle initial is L.
She is Eva L. Grant of Dallas.
That's right.
What age?
I think, let's see, I have it here. I think she is 56 years old. Just a moment, and I will see.
Jim, there's a rumor.
She is 54 years old.
Oswald danced with a stripper in one of his clubs the other night.
A rumor going around that what?
Oswald was in the club carousel last week.
That I know nothing about, and she says she knows nothing about that.
She does not live with Ruby, though, so the two could have met without her knowledge. Is that true?
That's true. She does not live with Ruby.
What address, Jim?
I beg your pardon?
What address on Mr. Grant?
It's in the... well, I won't tell you now.
What street?
I won't tell you that either.
What age?
She is 54 years old.
Just cut off.
I was
addressed by one of the television people from the station.
I was just talking to Captain Fritz about Ruby, and I asked the captain, I have been more or less out of touch, but I have heard today that the investigation of Oswald has been ended, and I asked Captain Fritz that when I got the chance, and he told me that that was not true, that the investigation of Oswald in the death of the president has not ended, that he has at least 5 days of paperwork to do, and that he intends to go on the Oswald story and check out every fact that he can find out about, every minute fact, if you're interested in that information.
Will you talk to us after you come down from seeing Ruby?
I will do that, and I will not be with her when she talks to Ruby, but I will talk to you when I come back down, and I will try to get her reaction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Spokesman for the sister of Jack Ruby, accused of murdering the man who murdered the president. This is Bill Lord reporting from City Hall.
Jack Ruby has asked for an attorney, Tom Howard of Dallas. Howard comes down and meets with Ruby. After seeing Ruby, he is mobbed by the press.
Of his legal rights, and I don't feel that I can discuss that any further.
Well, what is your course going to be in this? Are you going to plead him not guilty, or to the charge, or temporary insanity, or what course are you going to follow?
I'm going to represent him in the manner that I think is for his best interest.
What is his best interest? Not guilty?
Well, his best interest is to be found not guilty, of course.
Did he admit to you that he fired the shot?
I didn't discuss that.
That's Tom Howard.
Nobody knows anything about him.
Y'all excuse me.
Thank you.
This was Mr. Tom Howard, who is the attorney for Jack Ruby, the alleged killer of the alleged assassin of the President of the United States, Lee Oswald.
Like I said before, if his mind was in the condition it seemed to be when I talked to him at the time of the shooting, he could have hardly been anything else but out of his mind.
You don't have any reason at all to think he was connected with any kind of plot or any nature?
No, sir, I do not.
And you know him pretty well?
I know him pretty well.
Has he said to you how he got past the security guards?
No, sir.
What judge were you asked to set bond in this case?
The case is filed before Judge Pierce McBride, I understand, and he will be the one that will set the hearing.
Trial be held.
Oh, I imagine a week after this, probably, or maybe by Wednesday. You just can't tell about that. It'll be up to the judge.
Is Judge McBride, is he a JP or a criminal district court
He's
judge?
Justice of the Peace.
You know what precinct?
I got it.
Precinct 1.
If he refuses, what'll be the route? To a district judge then? And then on the...
He will grant a hearing.
I mean, if he refuses bond.
If he refuses bond, then the appeal will be to the district court by writ of habeas corpus.
If bond is refused, you will appeal?
Yes.
Has Ruby admitted to you that he committed the crime?
I haven't discussed the facts of the case with him.
You didn't discuss the details at all?
I did not discuss the details because he was in no mental condition to discuss it at the time I saw him.
What was his outward appearance?
He was almost on the verge of tears. Very nervous and upset.
Will you discuss
He almost cried when he thanked me for coming to see him.
Will you discuss the facts of the case with him tomorrow?
I'm sure that we will.
How did you get the word from him that, or the word that he wanted you to represent him?
His business partner called me.
Who is that?
Mr. Ralph Hall.
P-A-U-L,
I say he's a business partner. I think they're business partners.
And you have represented him before?
Yes, I have.
In what cases, or what type of cases?
It's been so long I can't even remember.
When was the last time that you represented him? Can you remember at all?
Several years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
In a civil suit, perhaps?
I think that it was.
Have you ever represented him in any criminal suits?
I don't think so. I don't have any recollection of what kind of case it was, really.
Do you feel that you know him rather well?
Yes, I think I know him rather well.
You said it's been 7 or so years since you represented him. I mean, have you seen him since then?
Oh, yes, I've seen him quite often.
I see.